Thanks everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's okay. My name is Abu-Bakr. Let me just give you a bit of background information about myself. I'm a historian. I specialize in Black and African history. And my scope of looking at Black and African history, I look from the prehistoric times right up to the contemporary. And I use about 11 different subjects or disciplines in order to argue my case or to find different sorts of understandings within the social, political, economic, or past experiential endeavors of Black and African people. So that's it. I'm also an educator. I'm also a special educational needs educator. I'm also an educational consultant for the Welsh Assembly government, because one of the things I'm trying to do, or hoping to do, is try to bring Black history into the mainstream curriculum. And I'm also a trained sociologist and social psychologist as well. So I've got a lot of information behind me, a lot of informational background behind me. So what we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be looking at the gold coins. So this, the first lesson or the first session is going to be looking at the gold coin, and that's what we're going to be dealing with today. Now, what significance does this gold coin have with Africa? Well, we know, especially if you look at the contemporary age, we know that Africa has every mineral you can think of on the planet. And we don't know, unfortunately, is being plundered. It has massive amount of gold deposits, okay? Now, Spain at this time is a sovereign state, okay? It's a country. And by 1494, the Pope had given Spain the whole of America. They gave them the whole of South America, North America, Central America, and Canada. All that was given to Spain. This is in 1492. Abu Abdullah is the last or the final Moorish ruler in Spain at this time, okay? And he hands over the keys. He surrenders the city to Ferdinand and Isabella. And that particular time, if you read the diaries of Christopher Columbus, Columbus himself said he was present at this particular defeat of the Moors, because the Moors didn't fight them. They didn't fight them. They just surrendered the city. Because at that time, the Moors, you know, major cities like Malaga, Cordoba, Granada had been taken. Okay, so the Moors had lost power at this particular time. So he had no allies left in order to assist him in his battle against the Catholic crown. So rather than fight them, he decided to surrender the city. He handed the keys to Ferdinand and Isabella. Columbus said he was present at this particular time. If you read the diaries of Columbus, he basically says, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that for him, it was the saddest moment for him, because he knew what the Moors had brought into Europe for 800 years would now come to an end. And this is when the destruction of science, technology would begin. Columbus himself said this in his diaries, is what Columbus actually said. And Columbus actually was walking around with maps at the time, which were drawn by Moorish people. And next week I will talk about where Moors were actually in the Caribbean as early as the 8th century AD, as early as that. So when they talk about Columbus discovering the Americas, there's evidence of Moors and Africans within America and who were trading in gold, yeah, even before Columbus even went there. And Columbus himself, not just him, Ferdinand Columbus, Balboa, Cortez, they all testify to the same thing.
As a question to the group, who's heard of Mansa Musa before?
I have.
Yeah?
Like the only information I have about him is that he was the richest man ever lived. And obviously all the things that Abu-Bakr has said so far, that's what I know about him.
I heard that he gave away a lot of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can actually extend to say I heard that he gave away too much gold.
Yes. So he comes from the Malian Empire, and his predecessor was already a very interesting man. He shared Mr. Abu-Bakr's name, and he was an explorer. But he was an explorer to the degree where he actually disappeared. He sent his people out to explore. They came back in their ships and said, we couldn't find new lands. And he said, well, you're just not trying hard enough. So got on a boat himself and disappeared, and perhaps ended up in Latin America. But often the idea is that something is found or explored when Europeans go out and find it. Mansa Musa's predecessor was one of the most passionate, well-known African explorers ever. Before he left, he handed over power to Mansa Musa. And the reason Mansa Musa moved across the continent is that he went on a pilgrimage. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, Abu-Bakr, but
pilgrimage,
he was on his way to Mecca and brought with him masses of wealth. He's not relatively the richest man to ever have lived, so this is not in comparison to how much people had then. He's absolutely the richest man who ever lived. Even people and the wealth that they have now, even your Bezos and everything would not have the kind of amount of money that he had in sheer coin, in sheer gold. So what Takura said about him giving away too much is he completely destabilized every single country that he went through, and that spilled over into Europe as well, to the degree where we can say pretty certain the gold coin in our collection is perhaps even left over from that voyage.
Yeah.
Is this an existing sentiment anywhere? This is just out of interest, that Gaddafi would have probably caused a stir up that's similar to what this guy did in his time.
Oh man, now I wish you had Huda here.
I don't know. I just because Mansa Musa was one of a kind, and this is worldwide, and he had so much. Does it translate to current? I don't think there's any. For me, there isn't a lot of synergies, because I was watching something hip hop yesterday to do in Netflix, and this guy had $200,000, when he was 19 years old, and he would drive cars to school and dump his car there, brand new car, and just go ahead and buy another one. So there is. I guess he is flamboyant, he is a show-off, he knows gold buys power to some extent, and he used it in a different way to which I see African leaders using it right now. He knew he was wealthy, and I think he knew how to use his wealthy, his ability to hold power. But I think for us right now, I think it's more or less leaders giving away power rather than having that ownership. And so I don't see the relationship there between the two. I actually see the slightly opposite, because I think Mansa Musa was very adept to understanding how much he can use his wealth to attain power.
This is a different thought. But if this guy understood that, gold, wealth, is a major source of power, okay, then surely if we use the analogy between gold and power, you would have understood that giving it away is also giving away his power.
Yeah, but what does keeping it make it you any? Does that mean, for me, more like you have to give something to get something back? And for
No. In his case, it wasn't giving away. He had so much gold that he could give away such an amount of it that would completely destabilize those that were already in power. So say he came into a new nation where someone had a couple of thousand gold coins. He was carrying a couple of thousand in his pocket alone, and then he had another 1,000 camels who were carrying so much more. So because of the sheer amount of gold that he had, for him giving away wasn't empowering the others. It was practically flooding the market to a degree that everything that they'd previously owned dropped in value. He was incredibly smart with how he used it. And to go back to the previous questions of people with money and rulers now, I think it's very important also to recognize that Mansa Musa came from Mali. So at that time, they were traveling, they were going out to see the world. And the country hadn't been colonized to the same degree. So these were people who had not only a huge amount of wealth, intelligence, education, they had libraries, but they'd also never been in a position where they had been othered before. This man would have had unbounded confidence. He did not need to prove himself. He would have been someone who was actually going out and saying, look, we have everything. What do you have to show?
I think simply put, yeah, what Takura is querying is what exactly truly was the rationale? Like, where exactly was he? Takura, am I misunderstood?
No,
think,
please.
Yeah, I think more or less the main inquiry is, so what exactly is the rationale? Because I mean, Sarah, I think you've postulated a theory that says he just wanted to more or less, he could destabilize or he wanted to destabilize if he wanted to. But then, I mean, what was actually the rationale? Was he trying to form some sort of economic empire, or what was actually? I don't know if Mr. Abu-Bakr could really help with that. Because I mean, why would anyone just want to want to be very philanthropic with?
No, for me, there's two things actually. So to go back to Takura's question, those strategies are used even now. You flood the market with something that's cheap right now, and all of a sudden you have power and influence, and we see that from the Chinese, for example.
Yes.
So those tactics are still being used even now. To go with that question of, for me, I think Mansa Musa understood the soft power of gold. He knew once he enters into Egypt and giving away all this gold and everything else, you are slightly buying people. You're buying power. That's what he was doing, you know. And his own kingdom, it was doing well. I think the kingdom was expanding. The kingdom was rich in the first place. So it was and it wasn't a matter of him trying to expand the kingdom to beyond Egypt and other places. That was not even the plan. He just wanted to go to Egypt with all these people and all that wealth, knowing that he would enter, and he was able to beat, I can't remember who it was back then, was a leader within Egypt, just by doing that. And before that, these people didn't know anything about him, you know? Yeah. So I feel there is relevance to what's happening right now, but I feel like he was moving in a different directions. Our leaders currently are moving in completely opposite directions. Rather than actually trying to buy power, they are selling. You know, they're giving away in my essence. So they're being bought, put it that way.